Hello, friends. Welcome back to English Classes Online. My name is Benjamin, and in today's video, we are going to look at summary writing techniques, and our focus will be on the correct and the wrong ways of using a preamble. So we are going to look at all this, but if you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Make sure you click on the bell icon as well so that whenever a new video goes live on the channel, you will be notified instantly. So I'm going to share the screen with you and show you everything in details, all right? So that you will be able to see everything we discussed quite clearly. So you are going to have my entire screen right away, okay? So let's begin with a quick look at the agenda for today's episode. I like setting an agenda for each lesson so that we look at the goals we have set for ourselves and make sure we cover all the items. Today we have 4 items on our agenda. Number 1, the introduction. Number 2, some misconceptions about what a preamble means and the ways of using a preamble in summary writing. Number 3, what is a preamble? And number 4, how to use a preamble in presenting answers to summary questions. Now, let's begin with the introduction. Now, this lesson is in response to a comment from one of our viewers. All our viewers and subscribers on this channel are highly esteemed, and so we value every comment from a viewer. And so this comment came in from someone whose name is Boseman OL. So Boseman, if you are listening, if you are watching this video, this lesson is to give clarification to the comments you made, the observations you made in your comments. Of course, when a viewer makes an observation, we examine it critically and we respond to our viewers' comment in line with the requirement. Every comment requires its appropriate response. We are giving this clarification through this lesson because there are issues that Boseman raised in his comments that need to be clarified. And that is why I'm giving this response, and also for Boseman to be able to appreciate our own side or on the issues he raised, okay? So having said that, I must add that where a viewer observes an error on our part or a mistake that we find out was clearly a mistake, we admit it and we correct it, because all we want is to give authentic content to our viewers. And we don't want anything that will mislead our viewers. We want to give the right thing. And we have always given the right content on this channel. And I promise you that you won't find an occasion where we will give you anything substandard. So in view of that, we respond to every comment, and where we have made any mistake, we correct it. On the other hand, if a viewer makes an observation and we examine that observation and that comment and discover that there are also some contradictions and there are errors in the viewer's contradiction, we also make these things clear so that we put the record straight and make sure that all our viewers get the authentic content. And whoever also has made the observation will also learn from the clarifications we give. So this particular channel is based on fair play and truth, and we aim at making sure that whatever we do on this channel is a win-win situation to all our viewers. Okay, so having said that, let's now look at the comments from Boseman. And what I'm going to read now will be the comment from Boseman. Sir, I guess you got the preamble method confused with the sentence method. Yes, the sentence method must make a complete sentence in bracket, but the preamble method doesn't need to be a complete sentence on its own. Get this clear, sir. Each point you present as an answer using the preamble method should not be a complete sentence on its own, but should amount to a complete sentence only when added to the preamble. Did this make any sense to you, sir? Example, in 2 sentences, one for each, summarize the 4 ways in which one can become wealthy in the society. Answers. The 4 ways in which one can become wealthy in society are by semicolon. A, working hard. B, believing in one's self. C, being honest in one's dealings. The above is the preamble method of answering summary questions, and it is correct. Meanwhile, the sentence method, which must be a complete sentence, is like this. A, one must become wealthy. One can become wealthy in life by working hard. B, a person can become wealthy in life by believing in oneself. C, one can become wealthy in life by being honest in one's dealings. So kindly cross-check your reason that the answer to the 2006 summary you presented was wrong because they were not complete sentences. Surely, I don't believe that, sir. And this is the end of Boseman's comment. Now, I want to respond by saying many thanks for your interest and observation, Boseman. I appreciate the fact that you observe something you perceive to be an error on our part, and you put the comment forward to us. I quite appreciate that. And I want to say a big thank you for giving your support to this channel and for being part of our online community. However, I think we should start by correcting some misconceptions about what a preamble really means and the correct ways of using a preamble to present your ideas in summary writing. So, but before we do that, I would like to point out a few things which also are some errors that I spotted in your comments, because this is an educational channel, and what we do here is to teach and to correct where necessary, and also to admit our own errors where we discover anyone. Okay, so I'm going to point out a few things that you should take note of. Now, in the example that you gave, then you gave some answers in response to the question. All right. And the example question you gave is as follows. in 2 sentences, one for each, summarize the 4 ways in which one can become wealthy in society. Then the answers you give are as follows. The 4 ways in which one can become wealthy in society are by, and then you ended your preamble with a semicolon. And a preamble should not be ended with a semicolon. When you create a preamble, you should end it with a colon, which is 2 dots. A colon is the punctuation mark that indicates that there is something that we follow, which the preamble explains. When we get into what a preamble means, you will discover that a preamble is an opening statement explaining the purpose of what follows, and to indicate that what follows is an explanation, is being referred to by the preamble. Then you indicate it with a colon, not a semicolon. That's the first thing. Then the second thing I spotted in your answers is that when you give the answers, A, working hard, you put a full stop. Believing in oneself, you put a full stop. Being honest in one's dealings, you put a full stop. Well, the right thing is to put a semicolon. The answers you are providing does not, constitute a sentence. All right? Each answer you are putting forward here is a phrase. Working hard is a phrase. Believing in oneself is a phrase. Being honest in one's dealings is a phrase. So the ideal practice is to end the first one with a colon, the second one, with a semicolon, please. The second one with a semicolon, and the last one with a full stop. Because this is the type of preamble that, if wrongly used, will make candidates lose marks. So I am correcting this in case somebody who has seen this comment follows this example, and in case you go ahead to hold on to this particular example as what is correct. So I'm pointing this out so that you will take note of the right thing to do. Okay, but having pointed out those few things, I don't intend to go further, because the purpose of this lesson is not to give a full analysis of the grammatical correctness or otherwise of your comments, but to put certain records straight concerning the correct and the wrong ways of using a preamble. So, and that is what we want to go ahead to do right away. So that brings us to the misconceptions that some people have about what a preamble means and the correct ways of using a preamble in presenting answers to summary questions. Now, the basic question to ask at this juncture is, what exactly is a preamble? So let's look at it. Now, what is a preamble? A preamble is an opening statement explaining the purpose of something that follows. That is simply what a preamble is all about. A preamble is an opening statement explaining the purpose of something that follows. And the word preamble in English has different shades of meaning, and you may use a preamble to refer to the introductory part of a legal document, such as a country's constitution. The preamble is the part that simply presents the constitution and say, look, this is the constitution. This is what the people have agreed. This is the constitution. Then a preamble can also be a part, the introductory part of a book, what presents a book. So a preamble is, the beginning of something, but a preamble is meant to explain what follows. It's an opening statement, all right? It's like you are presenting something, and then you are giving a covering letter or something to present the real thing. Now, one thing we need to understand when we look at the meaning of a preamble is that a preamble is not an answer to the summary question itself. So we want to restrict ourselves in this lesson to the meaning of a preamble as it relates to answering summary questions. So what does it mean? What does a preamble mean as it relates to summary writing? That is exactly the meaning we have given here. An opening statement explaining the purpose of something that follows. You are asked to summarize, in a given number of sentences. And take note of this, that in all WAEC summary questions, whether it is WAEC or NECO or any other examination body, they always state their requirements quite clearly. What you are required in answer to each summary question is sentences. You are required to present sentences. That is why the question always contains this specific instruction in 2 sentences, or in 3 sentences, or in 4 sentences, or in 5 sentences, 1 for each. Summarize, then you are giving what you should summarize. And when we refer to the 2006 WAEC summary question that I used as illustration in my video, which Boseman referred to in his comment, we are going to look at it as well, so that you will know what you are specifically required to present as answers. So what I want to make clear here, there is a misconception. It is wrong to think that a preamble is the summary answer, or a preamble is the answer to the summary question. No, your preamble is not your answer to the summary question. A preamble is simply a vehicle that you can use in delivering your answer. If a customer has bought goods from you and you need to deliver the goods to the shop, you may decide to use a bus, you may decide to use a van, you may decide to use a lorry, you may decide to use a train, you may decide to use an aeroplane if it is to be delivered in a distant place. So a preamble is not the summary answer, but a preamble is the vehicle, is the medium, you use in conveying that particular answer. Okay? Now, how do we know that? WAEC has already told you. WAEC didn't ask you to present your summaries in preamble. He said in 2 sentences, or in 3 sentences, or in 4 sentences. So your real answers to the question should be in sentences. Now, we need to get this clear, because this is where the misconception, a lot of people have this misconception. They leave the real answer to summary questions, and then they focus on the preamble. WAEC has something in the marking scheme, which we are also going to examine, and that thing in the WAEC marking scheme is aimed at warning students against the wrong use of a preamble, not because WAEC is saying that you must use a preamble to present your answer, but because WAEC knows that, like, as in every other exam, when you are asked a question, you are at liberty to use a preamble. You can use a preamble, and you may decide not to use a preamble. So even in answering summary questions, the use of a preamble is not compulsory. Get this clear. It's not mandatory. It is optional. So you may or may not use a preamble. And that should clear the misconception that some people have when they insist that your answer must be part of a preamble. No, that is not what it is. A preamble is a preamble, is an opening statement. But I will show you a peculiar situation where your answer becomes part of the preamble because the answer you are presenting falls short of the WAEC requirement of what the summary answer should be in the first place. So having said this much, let's now move on to the next point. And that is how to use a preamble in presenting answers to summary questions. This is very important. Now, I would like to say that the preamble you create determines the grammatical structures that should follow. Whether you should follow your preamble with sentences or subordinate clauses or phrases, there are different grammatical structures. And among them, the largest that can be called a grammatical unit is the sentence, which of course, obviously, is why WAEC wants you to present your answers in sentences, because a sentence is a group of words that contains a finite verb or a subject-verb combination and expresses a complete thought. If you are conveying a complete thought, expressing a complete thought, or expressing a complete idea, you need a sentence, not a phrase, not even a subordinate clause. Okay, so that is exactly what I want you to understand. You know, when you want to create a preamble, you need to know the type of preamble you create. And when you create a preamble, you should know whether what should follow this preamble should be a group of sentences or a group of phrases or a group of subordinate clauses, as the case may be. Now, I gave a preamble to introduce a group of sentences, which was exactly what Boseman's comment faulted, all right? I created a preamble, and that preamble I created is meant to be followed by a group of sentences. So we want to look at the issue raised in Boseman's comment. The question to ask is it wrong to use a preamble to introduce a group of sentences? That is what we want to look at. All right. Now let's look at the preamble I used in my illustration. You can look for the video, that I uploaded, where I explained how to, answer summary questions in the West African Senior School Certificate Examination, National Examinations Council, and other school certificate examinations. And so let's look at the preamble I created. And this preamble is created as a vehicle to present answers to the question that the summary question that WAEC put forward in that year. You can refer to 2006 WAEC summary question. And then question A says, in 3 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage. And then I came up with this. Preamble. A, the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are colon. You know, you end a preamble with a colon, as I earlier made a correction when Boltzmann in his comment ended a preamble with a semicolon. I made the correction because the writing is a colon. And so if you refer to the preamble I created here, it ends with a colon. And then 3 sentences are presented to follow the preamble, because a preamble is simply an opening statement explaining what follows. And what you are presenting here is not a preamble. A preamble is not an end in itself. A preamble is simply a means to an end. The end is the answer you are presenting, and the answers you are presenting should be in sentences. So I really wonder what is wrong with using a preamble to present the very exact requirements, because you are asked to present your answer in 3 sentences. And your preamble is simply telling the examiner or whoever is marking your script, here are the sentences you asked for. The 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are, and then you present the 3 sentences, which is exactly what WAEC wants you to do, to present your answers in sentences, not in phrases, not in subordinate clauses, not in single words. So this is exactly the way it is. And so the first one, rural-urban migration causes congestion in the cities. Facilities in the cities become inadequate for the people there. The rate of crime increases because of the increasing number of jobless youths. So you can see this is exactly, the preamble that I created. You can refer to that video. Then I want us to look at the second. Type of preamble that people can create, which is the one that can lead one into losing marks if not properly handled. Okay, so that is what we are going to look at right now. So, and I want to show you quite clearly. So some people may decide to create a different preamble as follows. And you look at, this is also a preamble, but I will show you the difference between this preamble and the first preamble we discussed. This type of preamble does not present a group of sentences. And this is where the problem lies. When you create this type of preamble, then what it means is that your answer does not present the required sentences. Meanwhile, WAEC has specifically said that you should present your answers in sentences. That is the instruction. There's no other instruction. There's only one instruction given in the summary questions. Check all the summary questions, from the past years, in all the past WAEC exams, and in all the past NECO summary questions. Check the past questions. The instruction is always one, in 2 sentences, in 3 sentences, in one sentence, in 5 sentences, in 6 sentences. And there is never a time you are asked to do any other thing than to present your answers in sentences. So when you present your answers in sentences, then this problem does not arise. Don't forget that you may decide not to use a preamble at all, and you may decide to present your answers directly in sentences, no preamble, and you will get full marks. That shows that what the summary question requires you to do is simply to present your answer in sentences. All right? So when you create a preamble, and the type of preamble you create presents your answers in phrases, as we are going to see here, then there are some requirements, that this type of preamble must meet to be in tandem with the grammatical principles that WAEC is examining, because it's an examination body, and this is English, and it's a test of your proficiency in the use of English, whether in speaking or in writing. So here, let me point out what the issues are and what the misconceptions are. All right? Now, look at this preamble very well. Okay? Sorry. I don't want you to get confused. So look at the preamble. Okay. The 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are that you see, this is it. Then there is a colon here. This obviously is a preamble. And when you create this type of preamble, you make your answers part of your preamble, because you are not presenting each answer as a complete sentence in full compliance with the requirement of the summary question. The summary question says in 3 sentences. And then here you have presented a preamble, and your answers don't make complete sentences. You have tied each answer to the preamble. And this is the kind of preamble that, WAEC gave directives to those who are going to mark your scripts, that where someone comes with a preamble, which when taken with the rest of each answer does not make a sentence, then the person will lose marks. You give half instead of full marks. And the reason is that when you look at the answers, you look at I, causes congestion in cities. It's not a sentence. This is a phrase. Causes congestion in cities. It's a phrase, because one thing is missing. A sentence in English has a structure, okay? And this structure, in most cases, one of the commonest structures is SVO, where S stands for subjects, V stands for verb, and O stands for object. All right? Of course, there are other elements of the sentence, such as the complement and the adjunct. But this is the commonest structure. And so your sentence should begin with the subject here. And so, but instead of your sentence, your answer beginning with the subject, now the subject has already been included in your preamble here. And that is it. That's it. That's exactly. This it is a pronoun referring to rural-urban migration. This is the antecedent of the personal pronoun it. Okay? So this is the antecedent, rural-urban migration, because you are asked to summarize the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration, and you are going to provide your answers by saying that rural-urban migration causes congestion in the cities, and it leads to inadequate facilities in the cities. It also increases the rate of crime due to the increasing number of jobless youths. What you have done instead is that in using a preamble to present your answers, which should be in sentences in the first place, you have cut your answer, you have cut the beginning of each of your answers and included it in the preamble. So when you create a preamble of this nature, you must ensure that the rest of each answer, when taken with the preamble, should make a sentence. All right? Now, for example, if what is here is that you can no longer say that the causes, no, it is appropriate for each sentence, that it causes congestion in the cities, it leads to inadequate facilities in the cities, it increases the rate of crime due to the increasing number of jobless youths. And one thing you should observe when you use this kind of preamble is that you end each answer, which is incomplete, by the way, you end it with a semicolon. All right? Because you are talking of 3 negative consequences, and each answer is tied directly to the preamble. And each answer is not the only one that is tied to the preamble. All of them are tied to the preamble. So the usual practice is to use a semicolon and then end with a full stop when you come to the last point. Now, this essentially is the type of preamble that, can be a trap to candidates. When you create this type of preamble, which makes it necessary for your answers to be in phrases. Because since you have cut off the first part of each sentence, you have then made your answer, each of your answers should be a phrase. Because you cannot be repetitive. You cannot say that it, then again you begin with it causes, that would be a repetition. So there is an idea you started in your preamble and you allowed it to flow into each of the sentences. And Wyek is saying that this type of preamble, should be, the answer should be designed in such a way that when the preamble is taken with each answer, then it maintains the grammaticality of the entire presentation. Now, having said this, let's now move on to look at some other things. I hope you have actually been able to understand what we are really talking about. Okay. Now, let's look at another important thing. We want to now look at Wyek marking scheme as it relates to the use of a preamble. Okay, because a preamble has actually been explained, and Wyek, as an examining body, knows that candidates may likely use a preamble. They are not saying that you must use a preamble, but if you decide to use a preamble, use a correct preamble and make sure you present the exact required answers that WAEC has asked you to present, which is your answers being presented in sentences. That is the main thing that WAEC is interested in. So where you create a preamble and you present your answers in sentences, this issue doesn't arise. So let's look at what is stated in WAEC marking scheme. Where a preamble taken with the different answers is a where, because there could be different other situations where you use a preamble and, you know, such issues don't arise. Where a preamble taken with the different answers does not make a sentence, award half marks. This is without prejudice to any deduction for any grammatical / expression error and irrelevant / extraneous material. Now, what does this mean? It means that if you create a preamble, you must ensure that the preamble consistently makes a sentence when taken with the different answers, especially when your answers are being presented in phrases or any other grammatical structure that falls short of the specified sentences that WAEC wants your answer to consist of. All right. So the WAEC scheme of work stipulates as follows: where the preamble taken with the rest of each answer makes a sentence, award full marks. You know, and this again refers specifically to that particular type of preamble. Okay, it refers to that particular type of preamble where you look at it here now. The 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are that it causes congestion in the cities. Because you have the subject already embedded in the preamble, then when taken together with this first one, it makes a sentence. You know, it causes a congestion in the cities. Okay, it causes congestion in the cities. Okay, so that is exactly the way it is. So, having said that, let's now move on and let's look at using a preamble to introduce a group of sentences. You know, to avoid falling into the trap of a preamble that does not make a sentence when taken with the rest of each answer, you can simply use a preamble to introduce a preamble that introduces a group of sentences. Don't forget that the major instruction already given in that WAEC summary question is clear on what your answers should be. The instruction is that you should present your answers in sentences. For example, in 3 sentences, you see, not phrases, not subordinate clauses. In 3 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage. This is the summary question in the 2006 WAEC summary, WAEC past question paper that, you know, I used as illustration. So your answers are required in sentences in the first place. And a preamble is simply an opening statement explaining what follows. And so when you create a preamble, you are using the preamble as a vehicle to convey your answers to the examiner or whoever is going to mark your script. Now, the only reason you may want to use a preamble is if you want to look if you want your work to look organized and you want to use the preamble just to as a kind of signpost to show the examiner that this is the answer and these are the answers I'm presenting to your question. This was the question you asked. That's what a preamble does. The question says in 3 sentences, one for each, summarize the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage. And the preamble is saying the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are simply, here are the answers to your questions. That's what a preamble does. It's an opening statement explaining what follows. Now, you may decide not to use that opening statement in the first place, and we are going to look at it when you decide to present your answers just in sentences. And the difference between presenting your answers with a preamble that introduces a group of sentences, the very sentences that the summary question wants you to present in the first place. The difference between this kind of preamble and presenting your answers directly in sentences is simply that you ignore a preamble, which you can do. A preamble is not the answer. So nobody is going to hold you responsible for not using a preamble. And where you create a preamble and your preamble only serves the purpose of introducing your answers, there's nothing wrong there. The central instruction is that you must present your answers in sentences. And where your answers are presented in sentences, nobody in his right senses is going to take each sentence and then combine it with your preamble, because that is not the kind of preamble that requires this kind of analysis. Where you create a preamble that already embeds part of your answer within the preamble, then, to help you, make your answer, acceptable, then it should be taken with the preamble. The preamble should be taken with the rest of each answer to ensure that it makes a sentence, because you created that type of preamble in the first place. If you create a preamble, which is simply an opening statement explaining and indicating that what we follow will be answers to the summary question, that's the right thing to do. So there's really nothing basically wrong with using a preamble to introduce a group of sentences, okay? And having said that, let's now look at using a preamble for a one-sentence answer, okay? Now, this is one common instance of using a preamble wrongly. And that is when you use a colon in a preamble to present an answer to a summary question that requires only one sentence. That is another very common instance, apart from the other type of preamble we looked at, where you already cut part of each answer and you made it part of your preamble. Then you must ensure that that's your answer that is incomplete already, because you have created a kind of preamble that presents phrases contrary to the instruction that you should present your answers in sentences. So when you present phrases to go with your preamble, then your preamble should be examined in the light of each answer, because you have already made the preamble part of your answer, which is not what it is meant to be, because a preamble is simply an opening statement explaining what follows. And what WAEC wants from you will be sentences as answers, as summary answers. WAEC doesn't want phrases from you as summary answers to the summary questions that they asked you. No. They said in 3 sentences, not in 3 phrases. You are the one who decided to create a kind of preamble that, is used to present a group of phrases. And now that you are presenting a group of phrases, because part of each answer is already included in the preamble, then that is where the issue arises. Then, one other common error is when you now come up with, you use a preamble to present an answer that requires only 1 sentence. For example, in 1 sentence, summarize the major idea of the passage. Now, let's look at it critically. Now, you can see it here. In 1 sentence, it's just 1 sentence. Summarize the major idea of the passage. The major idea of the passage is corruption among leaders. If you write it in 1 sentence without a preamble, it's also acceptable. Depending on how the idea is expressed, you can simply say that, there is corruption among our leaders. That is a full sentence. All right. And that summarizes the major idea of the passage. But you decide to use a preamble. Okay. In 1 sentence, summarize the major idea of the passage. What a preamble does is that it takes the examiner's question and reconstructs it into a vehicle that presents the answer. That's what a preamble does. So you now reconstruct it and you say you begin here. That's what every preamble does. You take part of the question and you begin from here and you say the major idea of the passage is, that's a preamble. And what follows is that major idea. But then it becomes faulty. It becomes incorrect when you put a colon here. That is one instance of using a preamble wrongly. You want to use a preamble to present answer to a question that requires only 1 sentence. Meanwhile, when you put a colon indicates that 2 or more ideas are going to follow. Okay, so that is basically what it is. So you don't need to put a colon here. Now, the correct answer is the major idea of the passage is corruption among leaders. And that is correct. Now, having given this explanation, let's now move on. Let's now move on to probably the last point I would like to make here. And that is my final recommendation on how to use the sentence method. What is my recommendation? Having examined what a preamble means and the correct and the wrong ways to use a preamble in presenting answers to summary questions, I strongly recommend that a candidate who is confused about what is correct or what is wrong, in the use of a preamble should not use a preamble at all. If you don't understand the correct way to use a preamble, don't use it at all. Now, the use of a preamble is optional. And I have always stated this fact in my lessons. All right. When I teach summary writing and I teach the alternative methods of presenting your answers, the direct sentence method and the preamble method, I always emphasize that using a preamble is optional. You may or may not use a preamble. And I have to add that there are no extra marks to be awarded to someone who uses a preamble. If you use a preamble and you present your answers correctly, you are awarded full marks. If you use sentences directly without a preamble and present your answers correctly, you get full marks. So nobody gives you any extra mark for using a preamble, and nobody penalizes you for not using a preamble. What does that tell you? A preamble is not the answer, and a preamble is not essentially a part of your summary answer. It becomes a part of it when you create the type of preamble that now grammatically, by your construction of that preamble, you make your preamble part of each answer. Then it has to be examined in the light of what is grammatically correct and what is not grammatically correct. And that is why students are warned to avoid any type of preamble that is going to cause this type of problem. Okay, so I want you to get that right, because these are the misconceptions that I needed to, give clarification to. And obviously, I know that these misconceptions were really what compelled Boseman to make the kind of comment that he made. And I recommend that Boseman should watch this video and look into it critically to understand that there is a right way to use a preamble. There are correct ways and there are wrong ways of using a preamble. And all you need to do is, to use the correct way. And one other thing that I want Boseman and any other person who may really still have some doubts as to the authenticity of this clarification is to ask yourself a question. What does White want in answer to summary questions? Is it a preamble? No. Now, does White make a preamble part of the requirement for answering a summary question? Check all the past questions. Do you see any requirement for a preamble? No. A preamble is an opening statement. And by the way, a preamble can be used to present answers to questions in any other subjects, whether it is economics or literature or biology or even physics or even in engineering. If you are going to present some ideas and you want to use a preamble, you use a preamble. So a preamble is a general concept that anybody can use. It's not unique to summary writing. So a preamble is not an essential part of your summary answers. And so you cannot pigeonhole a candidate to the kind of preamble that makes the answer part of the preamble. No. What you are basically required to present in answer to each summary question is a sentence. And that's why you always read the instruction in 2 sentences, in 3 sentences, in 4 sentences, in 5 sentences, in 1 sentence, in 6 sentences, 1 for each. All right? Summarize. You are asked to summarize in sentences, not in phrases. So nobody should get it twisted. Nobody should swallow anything hook, line, and sinker, but to really examine it critically. What is actually correct and what is wrong? Is it when you present your answers in sentences? Now, if a preamble is simply an opening statement, which is not compulsory, by the way, indicating your answers, explaining that what is going to follow will be the answers to this question. That's what a preamble does. And your answer should be in sentences. Now, should you not present your answers in sentences? Why should you present your answers in phrases and then fall into the trap of, making each answer part of a preamble? So, and that is exactly why I strongly recommend that if you do not understand how to use a preamble, don't use it at all. Use the direct sentence method, okay? And so that brings us to, we have already examined, have we already looked at the direct sentence method? Yes, we have. Have we looked at it? Okay. Using a preamble to present a direct sentence to a group of sentences. Okay. Okay, so this brings us to the point where we want to look at, the two options. The two options are, you can use a preamble, and where you use a preamble, you can use a preamble and present your answers in a correct manner. We have already discussed that. But what I want to show you here is the main difference between using a preamble and decided not to use a preamble, and then presenting your answers directly in sentences. Okay, so here, this is the preamble method. The three negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are, so this is the preamble. Okay? And then the answers are presented in sentences because this is simply an opening statement. And everyone should understand that your answers are these ones. I. This numbering is also optional. You may decide to eliminate the numbering and simply present your sentences. Rural-urban migration causes congestion in the cities, full stop. Then you begin with the second sentence. Facilities in the cities become inadequate for the people there, full stop. And then you follow with the third sentence. The rate of crime increases because of the increasing number of jobless youths, full stop. Those are three sentences, okay? All right, so, and then if you decide not to use a preamble, all you need to do is to cancel the preamble. Once you cancel the preamble here, assuming you decide not to use a preamble, you cancel the preamble, and then you are left with your answers. These are your real answers. It's just that you have decided not to use a preamble this time, and then here are your answers. Okay, which again you can provide, you can present in this way, or you can present it either horizontally or vertically. Vertically in a numbered manner, or horizontally even without any number. Whichever option you use is correct. The important thing is for you to present the required sentences. And this moment, what I also need to indicate here is that you should always begin with, the alphabet of the question. Because if you look at the WAEC summary question that you are answering, it is question A. Probably you have question A, question B, question C. And then if you have a situation like that, you must indicate that this answer is answer A in response to question A. Some candidates will deliberately, or let me say ignorantly, if they know, they won't do that. They will ignorantly write number 1 in answer to question A. You don't do that. if you have question A, then come up with answer A. Okay, so that's one thing I need to mention here. And then look at the sentence method. Here you are not using any preamble. This is just the difference. But to make your answer complete, you need to indicate that the question you are answering is question A. Okay, that is omitted here. So you need to indicate that this is question A. And then after A, you can now write I, and then you present your answer. You go to the next one, I present your answer. Or if you decide to eliminate this numbering system, all you need to do is to simply, well, let me erase this and then come up with, all you need to do is to simply write A, and then you can present your answers as follows. Rural, urban migration causes congestion in the cities. Full stop. And then you can go ahead and come with the second sentence. Facilities in the cities become inadequate. And when you are through with that, then you can come with the rate of crime and so on. So if you decide to present your answers horizontally and without any numbering, you can do that. Just indicate that the answers you are presenting are in response to question A, summary question A. So this is how far we can go in today's lesson. I hope I've given enough clarification, and where you still have some questions, you can ask in the comment section. If you have any further comments as well, you can make there. If you have any suggestions, you can leave them there as well. So that is how much we can take in today's lesson. So we are drawing the curtain on today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed the class. If you did, make sure you like the video and share the video with your friends and relations, especially those who might need this type of clarification for, better understanding of how to use a preamble in presenting answers to summary questions. So if you are new to the channel, kindly subscribe to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Make sure you click on the bell icon as well, so that whenever a new video goes live on the channel, you will be notified instantly. I have some resources in the description section. There's a free PDF ebook that you can download free of charge, and you will learn the basic units of English grammar. There are other ebooks that you might find quite useful. One of them is Good Success in English, a complete study package for effective English learning. There are quite a number of others, and if you need any of them, you simply click on the link, and that will take you to the book page where you can grab a copy for yourself. So I want to say a big thank you to all of you for being part of today's episode. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Goodbye for now, and remain blessed.